Hello everybody. Hello. Thank you for joining us today. In this 1 hour, I'm going to explain you how you could get started with Python because I'm receiving many questions, and some of these questions like really simple in terms of like what software should I download to run Python, or what would be the best environment to start using Python. So today I'm going to explain you a couple of different environments, and today we're going to write some code. So be ready to write some code with me. You don't have to install anything. And hello everybody, my name is Art Yudin and I teach Python professionally. So I've been teaching Python for 8 years now. I wrote a couple of books about Python. So my recent one is Basic Python for Data Management, Finance, and Marketing. And we call these data analytics or data science. And I represent a new bootcamp, RoboticView. This is where I teach Python. So please go to our webpage, RoboticView. And we offer a bunch of different courses in Python, data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence. So for example, next Saturday we're going to start Python intensive. So this course for complete beginners, where we're going to explain everything, and I could give you a promise that in 12 hours you'll be writing your own code. I promise that. You'll see. And today I'm going to show you a couple examples how you could get started. So so you actually here you could go to schedules. So you see one track's going to be okay. So there is a little mistake, but it's going to be on next Saturday, November 4th. Or if you don't want to do it on Saturday, you could do it on weeknights. So it's going to be 4 sessions, 3 hours each, and the next one starts, I believe, this coming Tuesday on October 31st. All right. So please check this website. By the way, we got a bunch of different resources. You could sign up for free meetups, for watch a bunch of videos, and practice Python problems. All right. So let's get started with actual Python. So what software do you need to install to run Python on your computer? So the simple answer would be you could go to python.org. And this is an official website for Python with documentation and everything. And here you could download latest version for Mac or for Windows. Now I'm currently using Mac, that's why it's showing me that download for Mac, but you could actually download it pretty much for any operational system, such as Windows, such as Mac, such as Linux, or anything like that. And let me remind you that what we're doing right now is a live stream, so we have chats going on. I'm going to keep an eye on that chat. So if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask me in our chat, and I'll try to answer them. All right. So one option, you could download it from here, but then you would need to download some kind of text editor to actually write code. And there are a bunch of different text editors exist, and usually people would ask me, why would I need text editor? Why Python is not enough? So the answer is that text editor, obviously we all know how to use Word document, right? So this is where you could compile your code. And when people hear about Word document, they would say, why can't I use just a Word document, because I already have it installed and know how to use it? The answer to that would be that Word document adds colors, font, styles, and we don't need any of that stuff. So usually people would go with the Visual Studio Code, and that's the most popular right now. Obviously there are some other solutions, they're all free. So again, if you're planning to use Python, you could just download it from here, or and then you would need to add Visual Studio Code. You could also download it here. Also free. And usually that would be a really popular option for web development. So if you're planning to use Python for web development, that would be a way to go. And you know that Python, or maybe you heard that Python is truly versatile programming language. So you could actually build web applications with Python, or you could do data science or machine learning, or use Python for algorithmic trade and finance. By the way, please subscribe to this channel because I got a bunch of videos how to use Python for finance. That's my passion. And that would be a really popular option for web development. However, if you're planning to use Python for data analysis, I would recommend Anaconda. Anaconda is also free. So you could just Google anaconda.com and it will take you to free download. And what is Anaconda and why I'm recommending Anaconda? Anaconda is a package. So when you download Anaconda, it comes with Python, it comes with text editor, and what I mean by package, since people use it for data analysis, it comes with a bunch of different Python extensions. We call them libraries. What is a library? Library is a collection of functions. So when you download an Anaconda, you get the whole deal, you see? Now, you don't need to download another very popular library called pandas. And by the way, if you want to see pandas, we're going to do next, our live stream is going to be about pandas and NumPy. These are core Python libraries for data analysis, and matplotlib. So when you get Anaconda, everything is installed. Now, when you download just Python, you would need to download pandas, and you would need to download matplotlib or scikit-learn, all other Python libraries separately. I don't want to say that that's such a big deal. It's not such a big deal. But here, especially if you're brand new to Python programming, I would recommend to start with Anaconda. Now, let me show you a couple of examples what I'm talking about. So if you download Anaconda, you would see it's installed in your apps. And when you click on that app, you'll see this dashboard, this menu. All right, so let me explain you what's going on here. So here they offer you choice of different apps. And you could also see that Visual Studio Code here, Spider is here. Now Jupyter Lab, Jupyter Notebook, what's the difference? Now usually I would recommend people to poke around, see what the difference is. In my opinion, difference is only in layouts. Now, usually I prefer to use Jupyter Notebook. I'm not trying to say that Jupyter Notebook is better than Jupyter Lab, but I mean, for me, it's more convenient, all right? So anyway, in all these cases, you'll be using the same Python, you will be using the same Python syntax, but the layout would be different. It whatever you like, because some people prefer Spider. Also, I know that in some companies there might be some kind of corporate convention. They would ask you to use Jupyter Lab. I've seen it many times. Again, if you know how to use Jupyter, switching from Notebook to Jupyter Lab won't take long. Will just take 1 minute. Now let me show you an example of Jupyter Notebook. So here, when you click launch, basically what it's going to do, it will open the front end, something like this, where you could actually create a new file. And by the way, in Jupyter, they call files notebooks. So that's a fancy name for a file. And it's really easy to use because here you could write code in these cells, Now, if you need more cells, you could just click plus sign, you're going to get more cells. You could remove some of the cells, you see, very easy to write. Now, if you're ready to write Python code, you could do some stuff with me, but in a minute, I'm going to show you a couple examples. So for now, you could just watch me. So now, suppose here I want to write some Python code. I'm going to explain it to you what it means if you're brand new to Python, what it means in a minute. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's really convenient to use because you see, when you write Python code here, you could click this run button and you could run the cell, and you need to hit that run button because until you hit that run button, this won't take Anaconda won't take it as a Python. So you need to execute your code. So you write code in the cell, and then you need to click Run button, or you could use Shift Enter. You could use Shift Enter. So that would be shortcut to run that cell. And then you see it's convenient because it will give you this output, all right? Or you could say something like 7 plus 8, and then you could run this cell and it will get you that output, you see? So that's why it's convenient because if you want to just download Python, then it might be, I don't want to say like difficult, but you need to figure out how to make changes, how to run your file and everything. So here everything is quite easy. Now, but Anaconda requires some memory on your computer. Now, frankly, I don't remember how much memory, but maybe if you got like maybe outdated computer, or maybe you don't have much memory and you don't want to install anything, there is like really cool version. It's called Google Colab. Google Colab. So you could just Google it. So Google Colab, C-O-L-A-B. And what is Google Colab? So that's pretty much same Anaconda, but online. So if you want to use Google Colab, there is no need to install anything. All you need to do is to have a Google login and a password. And if you don't have those, you could just create them in a minute. It's not difficult. And it's really popular tool for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's pretty much same as using this Jupyter file. And here, let me show you an example. You could go to File and find this in the menu. You can find this new notebook. You could click New Notebook, and then you'll see pretty much same file as we see here. You see, no much difference. So here we got cell, here we got a cell, but keep in mind that when you're running Google Colab, it might be slightly slow comparing to this version. Why? For one simple reason, because the speed will depend on your internet connection, and you're working on a server, right? However, it might be like really good if you're working with a huge data set, and that data set requires a lot of RAM memory, and maybe you don't have that much memory on your computer. So in that case, it will be running faster, because here right now we're using free version. But there are also paid versions, and they could provide you some additional memory, and then it could be quite powerful, you see. So it could be quite powerful. It's like really easy to use. So if today you're planning to write some code, because we're going to write some code, you could go to Google Colab and you could just log in. And again, let me show you when you log in. So it will take you to this welcome page, and then here you could see file in the menu, and then you could actually click on new notebook, and then you will open a brand new file. All right, so I hope we got people who's doing the same stuff with me. And then here you see you get in the cell. Now let me show you how to use the cell. So it's really similar to what we've seen here. So instead of this run button, you have this run cell right here. You see, right cell, and also when you point on this run button, it actually tells you that that would be cell, and you could use the same Shift Enter to run that cell. Now let's write some Python code, and as we're going to be writing code, I'm going to be explaining what we're going to be doing. So in Python, and you know that computers got two types of memory: short-term memory and long-term memory. Now long-term memory, if you want to save some file, so then you would use a long-term memory, so then you save this information as a file. or in database, right? But Python, although it's a programming language, it requires RAM memory or short memory. So here, if you want to save some information, you need to come up with a variable name. So let's use something simple like what is a variable name? Variable name pretty much like in the school, X could be variable name, Y could be variable name, and then here we could assign a value. So we need to come up with a variable name and use equal sign, and then we need to assign a value, let's say 7. All right, now keep in mind that here what I just wrote, it looks like Python code, but it's not code yet. Why? Because we need to execute that cell, so we need to click this play button, run cell button, and now this code will be executed. So by that I mean that code will be saved in Python memory. Okay, so now if here I could add another cell, and if I want to see what X is now, if I run this, and another option you could run Shift Enter, let me write it here, Shift Enter would be a shortcut to run that cell. Instead of clicking this play button, you see, you just run this and it's going to give you output. You see, so that's what's going on. So also one more time, why would we need this X? Because X acts like a label or a tag. So suppose you got a box with a bunch of items, you could add tags to them, so if later you're looking for something, you could fetch that item by that tag. All right, we call them variable names. So you need to save stuff with the variable names. Now, the most difficult part for beginners, and I've been teaching for about 8 years, maybe a little bit more, I don't remember. The most difficult part is data types. Data type is a very important concept, data type. So if you ask me where should I start, I would say you need to start with the data type, because that's kind of alphabet of programming. Now, no matter what you're trying to do, would you planning, if you're planning to use Python for finance, if you're planning to use Python for, I don't know, building apps or whatever, you need to start with data types. So what is a data type? Data type is really simple. Data type is, so here I'm going to offer my definition of data type. So here you see I got a bottle of water, I hope you could see it. So simple water, right? You can find it pretty much anywhere. So let's think about it. So water is the value. Water is the value. And the bottle is a container, right? So, and we know that's a common knowledge that a bunch of different containers exist. So you could have the same value in a cup. You could have the same value, I mean water, in the travel mug. You could have value in a fancy glass maybe, right, if you're at some restaurant or something like that. So the point I'm trying to make, we will choose an appropriate container based on how we're planning to use this value, water, in the future. So for example, if I'm planning to take that water with me on a trip, so then I probably should take it in a bottle, not in a cup, right? So you see, we choose the container. So data type, in a nutshell, is just a container. It's just a container to store some data. And you need to choose an appropriate data type based on how you're planning to use that value in future. So let's take a look here. Again, let's get back to x equals 7. So 7 is the value. 7 is the value. So that 7 has to be stored in some sort of container. Again, we call them data types. And you might tell me, now with water it kind of makes sense, that's kind of easy, but what's the deal with 7, because that's a number. So in Python we have numeric data types. Numeric data types. So there are actually 3 of them. But usually you could get by with just 2 of them. You don't need the third one. So the first one would be an integer, An example of an integer would be a whole number, like 7. Like any whole number, 7 minus 7, 7,027,000, I don't know, anything that's whole number would be stored as an integer. And the other one is a float. An example of float would be anything with a decimal point. So 2.5, 3.7. So any number where you have a decimal point would be stored as a float. So these are numeric data types. Now, and that's very important to understand. Why? Because you could do math operations only between numeric data types. Integer and integer, float and a float, or you could mix and match integers and floats. And then the question would be, all right, so which one should we use, integers or floats? And the answer is, it depends. It depends what we're talking about. If we're talking about people, so then you should use integers. Because, for example, I don't want to look silly and I don't want to say like 3.5 people, right? So that sounds silly. However, if we talk about money, so in this case, 7 what? 7 maybe $7. So then I would do 7.0, and now this would be stored as a float, you see? Now again, if we're talking about money, and even if we talk about like round numbers such $7, we still want to see 0.0, right? Now, as I mentioned, that would be difficult for beginners because they're always struggling with data types. So let me show you how you could fix that. So in Python, there are built-in functions. There are built-in functions, commands that's already built into Python. So if you have Python installed, so then you would have these functions. Now there is function type. You see, function type. And function type will tell you data type of that object. You see, it will tell you data type of that object, and now it tells us that x holds the value which is 7.0, and it identifies it as a float. Now if I remove that 0.0, and keep in mind we need to rerun that cell, so I'm going to click here, or you could do Shift Enter, and if I rerun this cell, it will tell me that now it's an integer. You see, that's an integer. And what it means that we have reassigned the value, we changed the value, we have reassigned the value of x from float to an integer. And Python is dynamically typing language comparing to some other programming languages. So what does it mean? It means that you could reassign values. You could reassign values here easily, and Python will, under the hood, will run this command type to check data type of that object, you see? So that would be an integer. Now, why did I tell you that that would be confusing for beginners? You could say, hey, that's kind of simple. Let me show you why. So for example, 7 might be coming as a different data type, as a string, you see? So all I did, I placed that 7 into quotes. And now function type returns me str, that means string. And although on the first line here, you see kind of number, because we humans, we see that 7 as a number, it's not a numeric data type. It's not a numeric data type. So what does it mean? What does it mean it's not a numeric data type? So you cannot do math operation with that. So let me show you what I mean. Now, for example, here, if I try to do 7 plus 7, it will throw me an error. You see? It's telling that you cannot use this plus operator between string, which is what we have here in quotes, and the numeric data type, all right? So you see, that's not working. And by the way, since we get an error, let me also tell you how to deal with them. So here I see what's actually wrong with my with my code, so they try to tell me that I cannot concatenate string to an integer. If I was trying to do 7 plus 7, so then this would work perfectly, because 7 is a numeric data type and 7 also is a numeric data type, so we could do math, right? And also I could do 7.0. If I do math between an integer, whole number, and 7.0 float, you see it also works perfectly. However, if I try to do 7 in quotes, now you see again we get an error, because what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to mix different data types, and that's a bad idea, you know. I'm just trying to add apples to oranges, and I guess that's not a good idea unless you're trying to make a fruit salad, right? So, and by the way, you always need to read what they're trying to tell you. So here we get a similar error, and they're telling us you cannot use plus operator between an integer and the string, you see. Now, if you're brand new to Python, so maybe at first it won't make any sense, so then you could just Google, and you see here they provide this information. You could just search Stack Overflow, and then they will explain you what went wrong. So believe me, somebody already had that problem before. So very important part is to understand different data types. So that would be your start if you're planning to get started with Python, and that's what we teach really well at RoboticView. So here you got a couple options. You could use built-in function int, and you could convert this string into an integer, you see. And now, only because the 7 looks like a number from 0 to 9, only then we could convert it to an integer, or we could convert it to a float. All right? And now we're getting 14.0. Why? Because 7 is an integer, whole number, and this command float will convert that 7 into a float. So now I'm doing math between integer and the float, and I'm getting 14.0, you see. Now some people might ask like why the 7 is not actual number, like what's the big deal with that? Now let me explain you something. Have you ever thought how computers understand emojis? There are so many emojis, smiley faces, not so smiley faces. I'm sometimes getting confused with them, right? Now let me show you something. So for example, there is string A. So A is the first letter of the alphabet. So everybody knows that, right? However, if somebody would show you a letter from a foreign alphabet that you've never seen before, you would say, gee, I don't know, that looks like some kind of character to me. So for Python, in Python there is function ORD. ORD stands for order, and Python takes this A as 97. You might say, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? Like, what is 97? Now remember, computers understand only emojis. I mean, what I'm saying, only numbers. I'm sorry about that. Only numbers. So computers, they don't understand letters or characters. For computer, it's 97. So, and then, for example, if we try and if we pass into that capital A, it will get a 65. So you see, for a computer, that would be a huge difference between a lowercase a and capital A. 97, 65, we see that difference. So that also explains that Python is case sensitive. So everything is case sensitive in programming. So think about it. So lowercase a will be stored as 97, and capital A will be stored as 65. So for computer, it's just a character. Now, even if that's empty, you see here I'm just using quotes right in that space. For computer, that string is still a string, and it's still a character, right? So character could be anything, dollar sign, right? So string is a sequence of characters. Sequence is a sequential data type. Take a look here. Remember, I'm getting back to concept of data types. So here is another data type called string, and string is a bunch of letters and bunch of numbers and bunch of special characters. So anything that you wrap in quotes, and I usually get this question asked like, should I use single quotes? Should I use double quotes? What's the difference? The answer is you could use any quotes you like. You could use single or double quotes. It's up to you. You could use them interchangeably. The main rule of programming, always stay consistent. If you open with a double, closed with a double. If you open with a single, closed with a single. So anything that you wrap in quotes, computer and Python will store as a string. You see, computer will store as a string, and that's the most important part. You have to understand that you cannot mix different data types, you see, so especially when you're doing math. And you might say, all right, so that's kind of cool, but how could I use this in real life? I mean, I heard that Python is really practical, like what could I do? Now let's do practical example with me, and I'm going to show you what's going on here. Okay, so here I'm gonna create new cell. Let me put it up here. Just want to make sure that everybody could see it. And let's do a practical example. Let's call it tax and tip calculator. Tax and tip calculator. So this is really practical, right? We all go out. At the end of the day, they would bring us a check. Now suppose here we have check, and suppose check is $50. Let's keep numbers round for now, right? So then we got tax rate, and tax rate in New York somewhat around 8%. Okay, 8%. That's what's given. And then we also want to leave tip, and tip rate, let's say 20%, right? So that's what we have, that's what's given. So now our goal here is to write Python program that will calculate the bottom line, right? Will calculate bottom line. Now, most of the time people will tell me, you know what? I have no idea where to start. I have no idea where to start, how to solve that problem. So I always recommend them to begin with something called pseudocode. Pseudocode, what is a pseudocode? Pseudocode is a step-by-step instruction, like an algorithm. So first you need to have an algorithm in place. And what is algorithm? Algorithm is a step-by-step instruction to accomplish a task. So I would do something like this. So it would look like this. So step one, define the variables. Define the variables. All right, so define the variables, something like this. So we need to define. So how we're going to do it? So first we would need to do check. Now remember, before we were using x as a variable name. Poor choice. In real life, you don't want to use x and y and z as variable names. Why? That would work, but that's not a good option. So don't be afraid to use long variable names. So if you got check, call it a check. You see, that would be much better choice, because when you get back to your code, let's say a couple of weeks from now, then it would still make sense. But if you used x as a variable name, then you would be asking yourself, what did I mean by x? What is actually x, right? Also here, do not begin variable names with capital letters. Don't get me wrong, this would work, but that's not a good practice, all right? And by the way, in all our courses, we prepare people for job interviews and for real life. So we explain what would be good choice, what would be best practice. We discuss commonly asked job interview questions. So check, I'm going to define as 50. So then we got tax rate. Now again, if you want to use two words, and that would be smart, in this case you could use underscore. We call that snake case, mostly used in Python. Tax rate, and tax rate would be a float. You see, would be a float. And then what happens next? So then there will be tip rate. And tip rate would be 20%. So you see, we have defined variable names, right? And they're all defined as numeric data types. So now we could calculate tax, and we need to create new variable for that. So tax would be what? So tax would be check times tax rate. All right, tax rate. So that would be tax. So then we have tip. And that would be check times tip rate. All right. And now what I could do, I could get total. And you see, now when you use these variable names, long variable names, it's much easier to understand what's going on. And that check is check, tax rate is tax rate, tax is actual dollar amount. So then that would be check plus tax plus tip, right? And then here we could use Python built-in function print, and we could say your total is, and then here I could place that total, and when I run it, I'm getting 64. I hope you got the same. 64. And that's, you see, like Python is not that difficult. Python is not rocket science. It's pretty much like writing everything in English, right? But you might ask me, hey, wait a minute, like what are the chances that check will be even number like this? Now, can we make this more versatile? And can we actually ask, let's say, user for a number? The answer is yes. So instead of hard coding 50, we could use function input. And here function input does two things. And you see, when I'm using this Google Colab, it actually helps me, and it tells that function will first of all, will print something, whatever we're about to write here, and prompt the user to enter some value. So here I'm going to write something, and you see I'm using quotes, so that would be a string. How much is your meal? And keep in mind that since I'm using string here, I could write pretty much anything I like. All right. So then if you rerun that cell, you see I'm going to get this prompt here, and suppose I want to enter a value 50, and then keep in mind you would need to hit enter, because rookie mistake, people skip enter. You need to hit enter, and it looks like there is a problem. We got a problem. Now you see they kinda underline this line, and that line means that's where the problem was originated. Or we don't know what to do. So you see, also they're pointing to this line, and they're telling us that the problem is on line 4. And then we could read that error, and then they tell us that we cannot multiply sequence. Why sequence? Because remember, string is a sequence of characters by non-integer type float. So and suppose, I don't know what it means. Now I hope some of you already guessed what the problem is, but let me show you like really good debugging techniques. Suppose I'm not sure what's going on, and I mean, obviously I could Google it, but that would be too easy, right? That would be too easy. Now let me show you debugging technique. If you're not sure what's going on, I would squeeze in here a print statement. And I would print type. Okay, so first I'm print check, and then I print type check. All right. So remember that command type I showed you before. So let's see what's going to happen. So here I'm going to enter a value, let's say 50 again. It's not gonna change anything, so you see I'm still getting the problem, but what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to debug my code, and here I want to see what check is actually is. So check is 50, all right, but then I see that there is a problem. There is a problem because check is a string. Check is a string, and remember, we cannot do math with not numeric data types. With not numeric data types. So you see, function type will help you to identify a data type, and that would be very useful. And now it kind of rings a bell. So what I'm going to do here, I need to use some kind of command to convert that non-numeric data type to numeric data type. And then here we got two choices. If you remember from before, we could convert that check to an integer, that would be one option, or we could convert it to a float, that would be second option. Now I wouldn't go with integers. Why? Because let's think about it. So $50, probably 50 point something, right? So we don't want to round that number. They won't be happy with us at the coffee shop if you're going to say, all right, let's round down that bill, you know, to 50 or whatever. So I would go with the float. So here I'm going to create check variable, and just to show you the difference, I will use float. So some companies would use that convention, check float, and that would mean that this check, so you could see the difference. So this check is a string, and you see when I point here, actually that's a cool feature in Google Colab. They will tell you, you see, str, and then here I will use float, and I'll pass here a check, and then I will need to use that check float instead of check everywhere, you see. And now if I run that cell, and let's say I enter some number, let's say 100, everything works fine. Everything works fine now because input, and by the way, when you point on input, you see they also pop up that help, and they tell you that that will be, so it reads it as a string. But people don't use documentation, and that's sad. But if you miss something, or if you don't remember something, you could always do type. You see, you could always do type, and you could check what went wrong with your check. All right. Now also later when you go into production, you could remove that line. You could remove that line, and or you could just, you see what I'm doing here, I'm placing this hashtag, we call this commenting out. So now it will have no effect on my code, you see. But this is a simple example. What we're trying to teach and explain, very basics at Python intensive, how you should deal with different data types. Because our goal is to learn how to gather information from different sources, and the information might be coming from API, from online, from CSV file, from a text file, from Excel file, and from a bunch of other sources. So maybe you scrape that data from websites. So if you want to learn how from scratch how to use Python for data science, and if you're planning to pivot your career, so I would definitely recommend you to start next Saturday with Python Intensive. You could find the description link in the description to this video. And in Python Intensive, we build a solid foundation explaining all data types in Python and how to use them, and the most important part, we explain behavior of data types. Believe me, that's very, very important. You cannot move to something to libraries such as pandas or numpy or matplotlib without solid understanding of different data types. And by the way, speaking of schedule, so here we got one as a weeknight session, so starting this Tuesday at on October 31st, or we also got, all right, so it's not weekdays, it's actually going to be a weekend. We need to change this, but it starts this Saturday, November 4th. So we're going to work from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. and I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know about built-in data types. All right, so and then after that you could move to more sophisticated stuff such as Python for data science, pandas, numpy, matplotlib. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, please watch our videos. Also here in resources, you'll find a bunch of videos about that would answer many of your questions. And also if you want to see practical use how Python is used for data science, here we're going to be doing another live stream. You could go to Python for Data Science 101, sign up and see examples how you could use Python for finance, Python for data analysis, and how you could actually move from Excel to Python. Or maybe you don't have to move from Excel to Python, because you probably heard that now Python is going to be built into Excel. That's a cool feature. Unfortunately, cannot show it to you today for one simple reason. So I'm using Mac and that feature available only on Windows. All right, like I mentioned, this is a live show and a live stream, so I keeping an eye on live chat. If you have any questions, we got a couple of minutes left. Please let me know. If you have any questions, I'll answer all your questions. All right, but in the meantime, let me outline the steps that you should follow if you're planning to pivot a career. Now, as a matter of fact, we have them outlined on our website, RoboticView. So here I would start with programming. I would start with a course such as Python Intensive and Python for Data Science. I always get this question asked, like, do I really need to know math well for programming for data science? It won't hurt, but I'm not saying that you need to be like really big at math. No. In our courses, especially in machine learning, we teach all the major concepts, you see? So all you need to know is like basic school program in math. Obviously, that's expected, right? We all know that stuff. And in our course in machine learning, we explain all the statistical concepts like really well. So we show how to implement them in Python, but also we explain them what they mean, how to apply them, and which statistical algorithms you should be using. Also, you need to know exploratory data analysis. What is that? Now, what is the data science? Data science is telling a story with numbers. So exploratory data analysis is pretty much you take data and you're trying to make some sense out of that data by manipulating that data and by using libraries such as Matplotlib or Seaborn to plot that data, to visualize that data. So this is where you will be gathering data, learn how to manipulate data, and do some data cleaning, essential part, and then you would need to present that data. So in our courses in Python for Data Science, we actually work on a bunch of different projects that later you could use in your portfolio if you're planning to get a job. So then you would need to show something to a potential employer, and you could have a portfolio of these different projects. Then you need to know what machine learning is, and believe me, this is so much fun. It's not difficult as it sounds. And in our courses, again, we cover all the statistical concepts and all algorithms, so it's like really fun. I would definitely recommend you our machine learning intensive as a extension of Python for data science, because you also need to know these algorithms, and that's quite fun. Deep learning is more sophisticated way of machine learning and and artificial intelligence. So this is pretty much where you grab data and ask computer to make some sense out of that data. And for that, we usually use libraries such as scikit-learn and a bunch of other libraries. You see, this is also so much fun. All right, so thank you very much for joining us today. If you have any questions, you could write them in your comments. Please subscribe to this channel, because we usually do live streams every 2 weeks, right? So, and the next one's going to be about how to use Python for data science and data analysis.